A week before the 2020 election, I asked my parents if I could watch the election returns from their house. And my mom, I remember, looked at me and sort of immediately said, like, sí, claro, yeah. But then she kind of cocked her head and looked at me again and said, like, but are you sure? This would be election day in 2020 in an extraordinarily divided United States of America. And my parents and I, Mexican immigrants, became citizens in the year 2000, did not vote for the same guy. I wrote a book about bridging the political divide with fearlessly curious conversations. And one of the questions I hear the most from students, from everyone, is how do you know when you can't anymore, when you have to stop for the sake of a relationship or your dignity or some basic level of respect or whatever feels at risk? And the best response that I've been able to offer is that the friction of a conversation between different points of view, the heat that generates, is good. The question is whether it's cooking something or burning something. The heat went way up that night with my parents on election night. When my dad and I raised our voices, his higher than I think I've ever heard it, talking about race and policing and the different concerns he prioritized around it from me. And when I stormed out of the room that night after Trump said he didn't trust the results he was seeing, I remembered thinking, only people in the movies do that. But I did it. I was like, I'm doing that. What? But I was that angry. And I remember my mom saying a few minutes later, Mónica, he's done talking now. You can come back.
Really?
But for most of that night, we managed to keep it to a simmer. We asked questions. We listened with difficulty. We drank Mom's sangrias, which were really good, and watched her favorite telenovelas, which were really corny. We let out some yells, and we held other yells back. And that resulted in something amazing and pretty rare. I grew in my understanding of their views, and they grew in their understanding of mine. So this work that I do found its voice and heart in the book, but it's also my job. It's my vocation. I work at Braver Angels, which is focused on political depolarization. I host a podcast called A Braver Way. I'm a huge geek for media. This is the most fun thing I'm doing right now and the most challenging, and it's just, God, I love it. Had an episode with the Republican governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, and the leading LGBTQ activist in Utah, Troy Williams. Extraordinary people, the way that they understand that standing for what you believe in does not require attacking the people on the other side. I know how hard this is. I receive and wrestle with stories of pain and rupture and hard choices and impossible bridges every single day, from conservatives and liberals, from elected officials, all the way to college and high school students who want to build the muscle it takes to actually find something braver and better, or at least try. One email I got that gave me so much fuel came from the teenage daughter of a current candidate for U.S. Congress. She's living with the hostility in our politics in a sharper way than many. She found my book and the podcast and Braver Angels and was moved to write a persuasive speech that she sent me about why she thinks repair is still possible. I wanted to share this speech with you, she wrote, so that you could see the impact on a 16-year-old who is simply trying to wrap her head around how to love people well while standing strong in her convictions. We are so divided, we're blinded. The social science is showing us that across the political divide, we exaggerate and we misperceive. We exaggerate the divisions, thinking the gulfs are wider than they really are. We misperceive the reasons people have for believing what they believe, thinking they are much worse than the reality. The hostility that comes from that hurts our ability to learn, solve, persuade, and even think. It leads to this vicious cycle where we're judging each other more while we're engaging each other less. And no matter how educated or informed we think we are, no one is immune to this fact of life in our divided country. Whoever is underrepresented in your life will be overrepresented in your imagination. And your imagination is not a great source of truth. Enter curiosity. Okay. The knowledge emotion, the at times unstoppable craving to learn that we all can access and direct toward the things we don't understand. But unlike, say, hunger, where you're hungry until you eat, you're only curious, cognitive research has shown, as long as your attention is on the gap between something you know and something you want to know. If you run away from that gap because of undue fear, because, hey, fear keeps us safe, and some of it is justified, or if you paper over that gap with an assumption you have chosen to believe, your knowledge emotion can't do its work. It cannot help you see what you're missing. You can't wonder about something you think is out to get you. And if you think you know, you won't think to ask. To unlock curiosity across a divide, when that can be the hardest thing, you first have to notice and then question your assumptions. The most pernicious one I've come across in our politics goes like this. If you oppose what I support, you must hate what I love. So one side says they want to defund police when crime is going up. The other side says they want to make it easier to buy guns when school shootings are on the rise. And both sides go, they must hate our need to be safe. Or one side goes, they want to force me to carry a pregnancy I don't want. And the other side goes, they want me to inject a vaccine I don't trust. And both sides go, they must hate our need to be free. It's not that far a leap from they must hate the thing I love to they must hate me. Once you start questioning your assumptions, it becomes easier to open our minds and our eyes a little wider. And across a big divide, it becomes easier to do what it takes to see the people and ideas around us for what they really are. Getting curious about each other with each other. Now, let's be honest, a lot of the time, we just want people on the other side of some issue to just change their minds and agree with us. It's only human, but it's also practically impossible. Because those people on the other side of this big toxic divide, your opponents, have to hear your arguments generously before they can truly consider them, and vice versa. And new mind-blowing research is teaching us something really critical. Across a big enough divide, people can only hear when they're heard. So in all my study and conversations and research about what's keeping us from seeing each other and how we can get it out of our way, here are just some of the things that I've learned and keep learning, because there are no final answers here. In fearlessly curious conversations, people don't disagree less. They disagree better. They don't avoid truth. They build trust in conversation so they can get to truth. They don't neglect persuasion. They seek understanding so that persuasion becomes possible. They don't abandon their convictions. They have the humility to hear someone else's. They don't demand to know why someone believes what they believe. They ask how that person came to believe it and look for the truth in their stories, even if they don't believe there's any truth in their conclusions. They don't insist that the other person at every step be just as curious as they are. They know curiosity is contagious, and it only takes one. And they don't think they have all the answers. They look for better questions at the border between their perspective and someone else's, and fresh chances to think or say, I never thought of it that way. Thank you.